so much really packed into this session. I think I would want to go through it again. Now, moving on to the next session, we have a workshop on customer retention, acquisition, why and how to solve. So, how do you actually go about the entire cycle? And we have a really great panelist packed, people who have actually done it, people who are in the midst of it all. But before I begin and introduce them, I would like to thank our session partners. This session is powered by WebEngage. And for the session, we have Ankur as the chair, who is the VP Growth and Marketing at WebEngage. And I'll quickly introduce everybody and then invite Ankur on stage to take it over. So we have as the first panelist Vaibhav Sisanti, who's the founder of Growth School. He spent around 7 years of his life building a business, his personal brand, and helping businesses around the world grow, skyrocket their profits, and crush and surpass their marketing and sales goals. Welcome, Vaibhav. Next, we have Deep Bajaj, who is the founder of Sirona Hygiene. An award winning social entrepreneur, Deep Bajaj is the founder of Peabody. He was also the co-founder in a non-executive role at Pramathi Care, a home healthcare startup in Delhi NCR. He's a Thai Delhi NCR charter member too. Welcome, Deep. Next, we have Anurag Murali, who is the VP Head of D2C e-commerce, High Street Essentials India and Fab Alley. Anurag heads the D2C and website e-commerce for High Street Essentials, an international house of brands that include the likes of Fab Alley and House of India. He is responsible for scaling operations nationally and internationally. Welcome, Anurag. Next is Prakhar Kasar, who is the business head of My Biz Make My Trip for Work. Prakhar is a business head and marketer with 13 years of experience across e-commerce and FMCG. He has managed PepsiCo sales operations in India's heartland UP, brand manager for consumer loved trademark Pepsi, and drove CRM, retention, and loyalty at Make My Trip, and is currently leading My Biz Make My Trip's corporate vertical. Welcome, Prakhar. And finally, we have Ankur Gatani, who's the VP of Growth and Marketing WebEngage. Ankur's an IIT IM Calcutta grad, was drawing up UX and wireframes for his social media startup back in 2008. He went on to lead product marketing teams in location mobile before getting deeper into CRM retention with Rocket Internet in India and Berlin. Welcome, Ankur, and I hand over the stage to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind introductions. It's very exciting to be a part of this conversation. And the session title, as probably all of us have noticed, is customer retention being substantially more important than acquisition. And I have a very eclectic, interesting panel here. People from interesting different kinds of experiences, including an education plane now in the growth space. So would love to dig deeper into the step one of the question itself. That how do you see the relationship between growth, retention, and product market fit? Essentially, that's we would love to go around the room, understanding your viewpoints on the subject, and we can play forward from there. Vaibhav, you want to go first? I mean, I'm going in the order in which I can see you on my screen, so might just be the easiest to navigate.
Yeah, I think first of all, thanks for having me. Uh, my take here is based on the limited experiences that I have working for Uber and Klook in the past, and right now building my own business at Growth School. A lot of time there's this mad confusion between growth essentially being acquisition and everything else being something else, right? And a lot of people, again, right, like it's easier said than done. And because of me being a marketer, I could probably put it in a much stronger way. But when you think about founders, most of the founders are probably not marketers or growth guys themselves. And having this direction point of saying, boss, growth जो होता है वो overall funnel होता है and not just acquisition is the biggest, I think, knowledge curve that people have to cross all across the board. But I think more of these conversations will actually get them to, think about retention today rather than a couple of years later and ponder on PMF, early PMF, I would say. Because today I feel the PMF is also moving quick. 6 महीने में PMF का गेम बदल रहा है. right? So that is the other side of the story. But I think it's an interesting topic also.
So we have a founder here. I think that's a perfect time to have his perspective. How do you look at this equation, Deep?
Well, I'd say, guys, it's all interlinked. But if I were to break performance and retention and growth into three, I'd say that performance is extremely transactional, right? I mean, it's something which anybody spending money today can show your product to the customer, and you can bring them. Obviously, you keep an eye on ROI by ensuring your CACs and other things are in control. I can hear a lot of background noise for some strange reason.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, sorry. While retention, I think, is where the proof of the pudding is here. It's the brand which actually cracks retention is the brand which is going to find the next pot of gold. You know, getting customers is easy today. You have the money, you throw it on Facebook, you throw it on Google, you get the customers. The where you make money is if you're able to retain them. So I think they're extremely closely knit. And I think Anurag will talk more about this. But from whatever limited experience we've had of D2C marketing, we've seen that for us it's 8 times more difficult to get a new customer than to retain the one who's already shopping with us. So going forward, I'd say the relationship wouldn't it's going to keep getting thicker. The guys who are going to champion it are the ones who are able to get the customer in, even if you get them in. But if you're able to retain them better, nothing like. And I think growth is going to come from there. It's not going to be only for. It's not going to be about you just spending money and getting the traffic. The real performance measure would come in at the blended level, and in blended, retention is the only ramban that you have.
Sounds like music, right, Anurag? How does it look for you? Because you have a completely different context and you've entered relatively recently into this setup. But what's been your playbook and how do you balance and how do you validate PMF, so to speak?
Sure. So, first of all, like Vaibhav also said, thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure. And the way I think I'm going to address product market fit, you're right. For us, being in apparel, right? The first thing is we've never been known very much for D2C per se. Initially, stores, even though we started as a D2C brand, it kind of offline became a huge part of it. And post COVID, the push for D2C is really being aggressive. Now, the thing to keep in mind is D2C in India, it's very hard to make money, and very few people kind of successfully do that. So a huge part of being able to do that is focusing on retention and being able to get that repeat customers going, right? And I would say product market fit and retention are almost synonymous. They would be synonyms for each other, because if you have a good product, you will have retention. In fact, any product, if it's not terrible, is going to have people coming back to it. But being able to reach the average industry average and exceed that is all about how well you make that product market fit work. And in apparel, we are obsessive about that, because we are nothing without the trends, without being able to create the products that people want. And if we don't do a good job of that, then we might as well as give up right now. So product market fit is probably the number one thing that's useful, important for us from a retention and growth perspective.
Fair enough. Over to Prakhar. Prakhar, you've been in the travel space in a relatively mature company. You've been around for a long enough time. You've looked at a relatively hard category, I would imagine, where it's a need-based affair. How do you look at loyalty? How do you look at retention? And how does that relate to your idea of what's worth scaling, what's not worth scaling?
So, to me, product market fit is about having something with which you can either solve a consumer problem or give a kind of value, not just monetary, but kind of value to the consumer. But just having that and keeping it to yourself is one thing, but being able to take it to consumers is where growth in top line, growth in bottom line starts coming in. And the proof of concept of your product market fit actually is retention, that the consumers have done the trial, and like Deep mentioned, throw money, you'll get consumers to try the product. It's not acquisition, it's trial. With the moment we start calling it acquisition is when we start going wrong from day one itself, right? So once you start calling it trial, and then the product ensures, the proposition that you have ensures, the consumers actually come back and buy it again and again is imperative. And that's what we are seeing in the corporate business here at Make My Trip. You don't solve for the corporates, they will have enough and more options, right? It's a big kitty that they will always have. They will look to multiple players to solve their problems. Unless you solve their problems day in, day out, again and again, 24/7, all days of the week, etc. Right? It's when it becomes important. It's then you are able to drive growth. It's then you're able to deliver to your business objectives and so on and so forth.
And it's then the rubber hits the road, right? Proverbial sense. So either
Absolutely.
we've been lucky to have this group of people together, or Ty has done a great job, because at least the knowledge curve gap that we would otherwise worry about doesn't seem to be the case here. Everybody seems to be on the same page that this is critical and this is something needs to be done. So I do hope that the audience takes this away as a key imperative to look after. And I'm guessing from a growth school perspective, you're also spending time and effort on educating people about the playbooks on how to go about this. So, what would be interesting is when you look at a founder ecosystem, at what stage do people need to think about it? What are the first thing they should do? How should they go about it from a people, process, mindset, culture standpoint? I would love to understand how you prep up people, and then we can go with more people to understand what they've done in their journeys on addressing this whole, subject of retention.
Yeah, I think, teaching is easier, executing is harder, is what I feel. At Growth School, yes, we do teach product led growth and product management and marketing and everything around growth, right? So we keep talking about this within the company as well. To be very realistic, right? Like, one of the most important factor for you to determine retention is for you to understand frequency, right, of your product. Let's say if you have a product like ours, where frequency is not going to be like daily or a weekly or a monthly. And when you're a 3-month-old startup or a 5-month-old startup, how do you determine retention? Because you just don't have enough data to validate anything, right? You don't have enough data to even map users, to kind of even cohort them to understand, right? How does your histogram look like? Where does it peak in? What is the use case, and so on and on and on, right? I think this we definitely should think about retention. We should definitely should think about repeat LTV, like, secondary retention metrics for a lot of brands to start with at least, to think about kaise chal raha hai. For example, at Growth School, right? While we want more people to kind of take programs and get themselves educated, the primary metric that we are kind of focusing on right now is the number of touch points that we can have with them, right, during the course of time. Is that the right retention metric yet? We probably don't know, because we don't have enough data to validate. But we definitely know that the higher the touch points, we are seeing those traction to happen. We've seen the initial hints of reputation happening. And also, right, if you are into consumer tech, right, where your use case is very clear. Let's say you're in a Uber, you're in a Swiggy, you're in a share chat kind of a business, or a Facebook kind of a business. You have parallels to draw, and you have clearly seen that, boss. The reason, the difference between a Facebook versus a Twitter is just purely based of retention, right? A 90 plus, while a 50-60% plus, and 5% retention point changes the game of the business. So if you are in spaces like that, it's slightly easier because you can look up to something. While that also could be a pitfall, but thinking about retention is usually a day zero thing. Is what you think about it while you can't execute it yet. Start think about it, is what we usually say, and try to preach.
Fair enough. It's a few months old journey for Growth School, and you're already talking about all of these secondary terms and metrics. I'm guessing engagement might be the right way, at least if people are attending all those live cohort classes on time. So we see that a lot in EdTech. But yeah, sure. So Deep, how's your play been? At what stage did you start thinking about it? What did you start doing about it? And how much of a mind space does it occupy? How did you deploy the people on this?
I'd say no matter what stage of the business you are, right? Even if you go back, decades or centuries, retention has always been at the focus of every business. It's nothing new. Even if I just go just a couple of decades ago, Shopper Stop retention program was the one of the best, right? It's so easy to sell to the same customer than to get new. So retention has to be something which is core to your business. In a way, what you're saying is how good or bad my product is. If my product is good, how often will the customer come and buy it again? That's retention. Now, in the digital term, what you're trying to say is how can I create assets digitally, which are not as expensive as perhaps showing a full page ad to the customer and say I'm on sale. How can you create those assets, and what kind of journeys can you create for the customer, which gets the same customer back to me? So retention is a day zero, no, it's a day -10 topic. That has to be the core. We think about अगर एक बार customer हमारे पास आ गए, and I love the way Prakhar said, actually whatever we've been so far confusing as CACs, it's not CACs, it's cost of a trial.
Yeah.
In the game starts there. If I am able to sell to this customer over and over and over and again, that's when I found my product market fit. Depending on obviously the category, in a category like ours, we're into female hygiene products, right? So in our case, getting the customer in, much more critical is how often is the customer coming back.
Yeah.
Retention, day minus 10 topic in terms of why. Whys are very simple. It's so expensive to get, today traffic to your website. ROASes are through the roof. Those spends what they were about 8 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, they are almost 4x more expensive today. So
I
what
feel
you
you, Deep.
yeah, thanks. Just better our repeat selling by 5%. You will see the profitability goes up by 25%. Your
I wish I
likelihood.
could. I'm hoping we have a recording of this conversation because what you find is super obvious minus 10-day affair does not seem to be common knowledge anymore. Especially because if you see the failure rates of startups, a lot of it has to do with how they've burned the money from the first couple of years and they did not follow through retention. So that's
No,
the
it gives me
irony of the
sleepless nights,
situation.
man. It gives me sleepless nights right now. So we've been a business that has built business more on marketplaces, have been profitable for
Sure.
3 years. Now we've raised money. Raised money means we're
Hmm.
spending money. Now we're
You
spending
have to
money.
deploy.
When you're looking at ROAS and ECOSes, it's giving you sleepless nights, and we are increasingly working on this here. How do you crack this retention to a level which is better than the industry standards? I'm not okay with a ROAS of 1, 2, 3. Not attainable.
I
So
can fully imagine. Yeah, but that's a fun fact. At least I'm, in some sense, it's music to my ears that you're already so conscious of the subject. But that's not something we hear super commonly. We, in fact, run a startup program at WebEngage, and the ambition is to sensitize people to think about this subject more early in their lives, right?
let the
And I
money
can
run
see
out, my
Vaibhav
friend.
nodding here, and I can imagine that the more startups you interact with, the more the reality kind of hits that. Okay, guys, this is kind of obvious, I thought, but doesn't seem to be the case with a lot of people. And
It's
yeah,
like a
in
myth.
Anurag, what's your impression? When did you start your play on this?
So I think I kind of concur with what Deep was saying, which is that it has to be a minus 10-day journey. You begin at the bottom. But the second thing I feel the problem is that we complicate the hell out of this. Yeah, like retention. I mean, even just calling it retention is just so boring. Like, I mean, you guys at WebEngage also I think have to take the little bit of blame on this. But it's just what the reverse. And for any startups or entrepreneurs that are out there, it's literally one way is to find out how do I retain my customers. The second is to flip it on its head and be like, why are customers leaving me? And solve for that. So we, for example, at Fab Alley are super obsessive about this whole thing, which because apparel return rates are very high, right? The industry is like anywhere from 20 to 30%. So we want to track. We on a monthly and on a fortnightly basis are trying to figure out why are people returning these products, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with the product, why do they want to return it, what are the reasons. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we brought in an entire customer service department in house, because we wanted more control on feedback and wanted to get real-time information on what is going right and wrong. And this I think is a huge part of it, which is simplifying this entire thing and just like turning it on its head and solving for why are customers leaving me, rather than how do I make this person stay. It's like I think you want to be preventive rather than curative.
Interesting. So I'm wondering if calling it growth or calling it survival tactics might just make it a little more alarming. We
Yeah,
wanted to
make
be
it sexy.
alarmist about it, hence. Yeah, I can imagine that should be fun to actually call it growth driver. It is a large part. So the part that we tend to struggle with, and I'll come to you, Prakhar, in a second, is the kind of if you look at the CMO's table, typically the amount of attention the acquisition side of things get is not the same as what the retention side of things get. For example, in your case, the guy, if he's somebody serious about retention, he might come back and tell you that this category of products is driving bad customer experience, so please remove it from the catalog. And that's not usually what a marketing team person can ever come back to the management and say that you're acquiring customers for shitty products, right? I wonder, Prakhar, you've seen a fairly long curve on this. So, the part that minus 10 days is like, 20 years ago, 15 years ago for Make My Trip. But you've evolved, you've experimented, you've built the playbook, you have a large team playing on this now. So, what was that resource allocation? What was the mental bandwidth allocation to the subject, and how did it evolve over time? Because you're also in a very competitive space, right?
I think if I have to answer for Make My Trip, it's in the DNA to be able to think what is that we can do to make lives better for our consumers and our suppliers, right? And I will not forget our suppliers. So therefore, it's extremely important that we are able to drive value to all three of the parties involved in any transaction or fulfillment of the transaction. And because of that thinking, constantly finding the reasons of ways of improving it, etc., etc. That's upon the other point, I think, with Deep and Anurag were also talking about, right? Why it is sexy to talk about acquisition. We acquired 1 million new consumers last month. That's a big statement. We got 1 million of 5 million consumers to transact again. Is okay, only 20%, right? That's where it changes. You that 1 million who's or 5 million who've transacted again, you've not spent much, right? That is much important, and it's an easier number to talk when it's acquisition. The problem happens is why those 4 million never turned up, or if they turned up, why didn't they buy? It's a
Exactly
tougher
like
one.
Anurag said.
It's a tougher one to talk in one number, because there's no one number there. There may be 3 million problems in those 4 million consumers, why they didn't come again or buy again, etc., etc. And therefore, being able, it's India we're talking about, right? It's not a small country, three kinds of audiences, 100 kind of audiences. Everyone's different, motivations are different, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it's not a what do you say? You can't talk about it in a 10-floor lift journey. You can talk about 1 million acquisition in a lift journey very quickly, and then you get an eyebrow raised, and that's where the thinking has to be different. Whenever someone doesn't believe in retention, uh, for us, it's in the DNA. It's in the DNA that we need to solve for that. That's the way we've built it, and that's the way we've survived.
So DN is an amazing word to use here. And while of course Anurag wants to blame us for the whole thing, we kind of pass a bit of that buck to media, because when you talk about growth with all of these unsustainable mechanisms, that still makes a whole bunch of people into amazing heroes, right? But anyway, I'm not here to bash somebody or anything similar. What I'd love to zoom in, since you all seem to be so committed to the idea of retention, what is the team structure org that's actually making it happen for you? And you're all at different scales of operation, different vintage. So maybe that'll also probably give Grow School a hiring plan on what kind of roles they should prepare people for. But would love to understand the kind of team setup bandwidth, at what levels do you kind of do this at?
Oh, who's going for this? I thought I'm not going first for this.
You can go first, and you can then probably close it.
Yeah.
Vivek. So Deep, you can
Yeah, I
probably
think,
take us on with this. What's the org behind retention as a subject?
I'm sorry, your voice broke.
Yeah,
Am
Did
I
you
audible?
hear that?
no,
Deep, I was saying Deep could probably start with this. We'll round up
Oh,
with
sorry.
Madhav, who can then close
Okay,
with.
okay. Okay. No, sorry, guys. So at our end, DTC, we started focusing early last year, and retention team was hired day zero, as always, because we knew that the kind of products that we have, whether it is Peabody or Cups, uh, customers don't return our products. Unfortunately, it's a personal care product, but the repeat is far more critical, and hence retention comes in as something which is more critical a topic. So we have a design team which is responsible for creating content which is relevant. We are a topic about which women really want to know far more. So there's a content team who's creating content, and then there is a team which is creating journeys. And yeah, we are one of the customers for Web Engage, reasonably satisfied.
Of course,
So. Uh, so
I take that as feedback offline.
yeah, not the right forum. And then obviously there's a team which is working on these journeys and personalizing content for them. So in total, about 4 people who are only working on retention as a piece. We started this on day zero, like I said, guys. For us, the minute we started D2C, retention was day one topic, because for us, repeats are far more critical uh, to measure whether we are doing right or wrong.
So would it be fair to say that Deep, on its personal level, looks at cohorts on a weekly basis, at least if not more frequently?
Yeah, team looks at it daily.
Yeah, I mean, at your level as well, at once a week level,
Yeah,
at least if not more.
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So 4 people, day zero onwards, design, content, campaign management, as you call the journey piece, and the fourth one was personalization,
Yeah,
content
so
creation.
there is a content creation team and there's a team which is working only towards personalization, because not the same kind
Sure.
of content can be shown to every customer.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody who's
Fair.
opted out, added the product, was adding another product and went out, or did not add a product, was
Sure.
borrowing this product. What are the issues? Why did she not really? Did she look at the multiple sizes that we have in the cups and then got confused? So what was the reason? So
Sure.
one team which is personalizing journeys and one is which is only into content creation. Overall, important aspect for us.
Fair enough. And this is a year-old operation, so you have at this level of maturity, 4 people focus on the subject. Anurag, how about your setup?
So again, sorry, you were talking to me, right?
Yeah, Anurag.
Awesome. So I think as we discussed, retention is like a much bigger piece than just the person or the team that's kind of running it, right? So everyone from the CX team who's measuring our NPS, to maybe the product team that's kind of working around it. So I would say holistically it's bigger, but for the sake of your discussion, I think you want to know who's the person who uses WebEngage or similar competitors,
No,
right?
I want the audience to understand how to build the teams. This is not about WebEngage agenda.
Sure.
I want the audience to figure out how to build their team.
Yeah, so I think it's not that complicated. I think we for example have one person who takes care of the entire retention and remarketing piece, and of course I overlook that entire piece, right? So for example, they would have a team, a head of let's say the D2C or marketing, and then that person would have one person under them. So I think you need two people to be looking at that data all the time, apart from the founder. But that's at the scale. Initially, you just literally need one person, or if it's an early startup, you just need yourself to be able to understand how to build journeys on whether that's WebEngage or CleverTap. So, I mean, just to give you context of journeys, I was reading something very interesting about how when someone visits a restaurant for the first time, I believe and if they have a great experience, their statistical probability of returning is about 40%. The second time, if they have a great experience, the statistical probability is still 40%. Now, they come a third time, the statistical probability of the was that you're not marketing for the first visit, but for
It's just me, or we can't hear Anurag at the moment.
Can't hear him.
Okay. I'm assuming what he's saying is after the fourth transaction, the repeat rates tend to get a lot better.
Yeah, can you guys hear
Anurag,
me
I
now?
was trying to complete for you. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So I don't know where I left off.
No, you were saying that after the second transaction, it's still at 40%, but
No,
at
still
the third or
40%,
fourth, probably
and
it gets it's much higher.
And at the third time, it's 70%, right? For the fourth visit. So you're marketing not for the first visit, but for the 3 visits that you need a customer to come for them to become a lifetime valuable value, right?
I
Now,
wonder
for
what the
us,
CAC would look like, right? You would change the definition of CAC for this thing.
no, absolutely. And then, I mean, you have to look at the LTV and then, look at the ratio,
Yeah.
etc. Right. So, and just to quickly give context for myself is that anytime, the moment a customer finishes buying a single product on our website, there is something called a 45-day journey emailer and SMS that kind of immediately starts for us, which means where the moment they purchase, we put them on this path where they start getting an email from the founder. They start getting brand promotional categories about, oh, this is what this category is about, this is what the product is about. Then they get, maybe we start upselling them and cross-selling them different categories, different products, so that we get more purchases from the same customer. And at any moment, if they buy, the entire journey or different kind of journey starts again. So it's really about
Sure.
creating the journey and making sure that they are at all times being, let's say, in a particular funnel, and at no point do you lose that attention of that customer.
Yeah. Fair enough. So there is a degree of sophistication that you already have in place, despite it being early and a relatively small team. Prakhar, I'm assuming
It's
you built. Yeah, sorry, Anurag, you're saying.
sorry.
Go on, go
No,
on.
I was just saying, I think it's come with time. I would say that we have reached a certain scale now, where we have learned from a lot of our previous, let's say, non-optimizations, and now have reached this time. It's a matter of time. Everyone goes through this journey.
Sure. Yeah. So Prakhar has had a lot longer in the journey. So maybe your org would look a lot more complex in some fashion. Or would you be able to just throw some light on what is the key strengths and skills that you've put together on the subject?
So I'll divide this into two parts. You can have one dedicated team, which you call a customer retention team or life cycle management team, etc. And you can talk about that as a structure here, or you can talk about the DNA itself. That how at every stage, every person that is involved is solving for a consumer problem, so that they come back and buy the product again. They come back and like a service, etc. Right? So be it the post sales team, which is ensuring that the quality of the responses or the speed at which you are for solving problems is faster, or the product manager who's thinking of one nuance solve, how to place that button on a different color itself is an important problem to solve, because it makes a difference to a set of audience, right? So therefore, all of that leads up to a higher attention. It's you can classify a lot of it in product market fit, or you can classify it in retention. But it all works together to the first question that you'd asked, right? It all works together so closely that it's everyone's job to think, what I can do better to, so that the consumers come again and buy what we are all trying to solve for consumers. So it's that. But to specifically answer the question of, within the marketing team, if you want to structure a team on retention, you have to have people who think dedicatedly just that, right? And who think there are different cohorts of customers. You can cut them in various forms and shapes. And at the end of the day, it's the real objective that a business is looking for is a share of wallet of that customer. And that customer might do 2 travels in a year, might do 2 travels in a week. And therefore, seeing same retention percentage definition for both of them might lead you to a suboptimal goal. And therefore, you have to cohort your customer, the team customers differently and team accordingly, so that you focus on the right set of problems to resolve within the marketing team, and then take it forward. But it has to be a org DNA more than anything else.
I'm quite amazed about the number of times the word DNA has appeared in Prakhar's conversation. It's clearly something which is quite clear, substantially ingrained in there. But so one of the things maybe Vaibhav might relate to better is we have about 450 odd customers at Web Engage, and I every other day get a call from somebody or the other saying that, can you help me hire for a few people and roles? So I'm assuming running growth school, you would also be at the receiving end of people who want to hire from your courses, people who have gone through courses at growth school. So what kind of role structures, what kind of JDs, what kind of levels at which you think a lot of this is now being asked for? Because growth is a great subject. The demand of talent versus the supply of talent is a gap. So you're doing a perfectly great job there. Would love to understand what kind of requirements are coming to you from there.
So the requirements are wacky all the place. Before we cater to someone, we have multi-million dollar, close to $1 billion companies coming to us saying that, hey, can we hire? Because tech as a factor is solved to an extent, but rest of it isn't, right? And that's what we are trying to tap into to start with, right? So there are these, I think the fundamental problem is that this is not being taught at the time when this should be taught. You know what I mean? Most of the CLM people, most of the folks who were managing comms in the past, for a lack of better word, to start with, have realized these metrics and eventually are phasing into growth marketers or even retention marketers. To be frank, right? So are we able to cater to this on day zero? Actually, not. We are trying to. We are trying to pass on people with the knowledge, with the intent to think like this to start with, so that they don't have to rediscover once they go there. And the kind of thinking that we're trying to put in their minds is by fundamentally thinking about metrics on a team level, not just on a broad company level, right? Let's say a one metric that matters, what kind of is a metric that you look at, because OMTM always leads to a better engagement or a better product experience or a better reputation, which usually leads to a better retention, right? So that's what we do at Growth Square, and that's what we kind of push out as well. But sadly, we haven't been able to cater to the insane amount of demand that there is for CLM, retention folks, and everything around it. I think India में अगर खींच के देखेंगे तो maybe we'll find 1,500 to 2,000 people who understand this really well. I mean, that's my
2,000 sounds like a
hunch.
great number.
Sorry.
For the kind of demand we're getting, for the kind of demand we're getting for this role, we in fact running a wide hunt. We in fact started a retention 30 under 30 program with Economic Times, and we're inviting applications just to be able to understand who's where in their maturity curve. So, and the same thing, we in fact all the way up to a university play, not like we're an education company like you guys, but it just seems imperative because unless there is people who understand what to do and how to do it, people will remain concerned. And while the CXOs here seem to have all the right mind share for the subject, they would also need people who can actually do it hands-on day in and day out. With that, I think it's quite impressive that we have a panel with, and you mentioned 2,000 people who understand the subject. That's some breather for me. Hopefully, people who are looking for professionals in the growth space can find some of them, or hopefully Growth School will start more aggressively scaling up their operation to get a larger supply of talent in. So yeah, we'll remain active.
Maybe you guys
With
should.
that, I think we've hit the end of our time. I'm sorry?
Ankur, maybe you guys should start a growth school of yourself for retention.
We're working with Vaibhav on it. So the next UTC cohort has enough inputs from
That's a
Web
hard
Engage to
nut
make
to
that
crack.
happen. So yeah, by all means.
That's a hard nut to crack.
Fantastic.
So you rather come and discuss.
And Ankur, maybe
You should
one
come
last piece of advice
recruit.
could be don't do that 30 under 30, do that 40 under 40 so that, two people here on the panel can also.
Yeah, I know, but I want to get the first bunch out. We'll do the next
Right?
one
I'm rounding
subsequently.
fucker. I'm assuming. So, but yeah.
I
good
want
panel.
their teams to be built to add this, right? So that's how we'll play it. But awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Ty, for organizing this conversation. I hope the importance of retention is no more in any kind of doubts for people. And if after all of this commonsensical play, people still goof this up, tough luck. Can't help.
See you guys.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.